Now, Christopher Hitchens emerged in public life at university in the 1960s as a fully formed walking paradox, heckling on picket lines during the day, swilling champagne in polite Oxford salons by night. He was the public schoolboy trot who ended up as a Washington pundit, cheering on George Bush as he headed off to invade Iraq. Hitchens made his journalistic mark on the New Statesman in the early 70s, has written numerous political biographies of both his heroes, including George Orwell, and villains, including Bill Clinton, and is a star writer for Vanity Fair. Now, for the first time, he turns his attention to himself with a memoir called Hitch 22. The book starts with Hitchens confronting his own mortality when he's referred to in an exhibition catalogue as the late Christopher Hitchens. Did that experience spur him on to write about himself?
It did, as Dr. Johnson said, concentrate the mind somewhat. And I had already had it in mind to consider a memoir, and I'd just turned 60 and was finding my thoughts looking back rather more than they had before. So I thought, yes, this probably would be the right time to do it.
And you are an avowed atheist, or in fact an anti-theist,
yes,
as you would have it. But if you did have a god, then it would be Janus, wouldn't it, the Roman double-faced deity?
It would, the one that guards the door, and for whom, therefore, there's an excuse for being two-faced.
And you embrace contradiction. You say that's always been
yes,
you. And duality is the recurring theme of the book, and particularly with the name. Chris or Christopher. There's a whole chapter called Chris or Christopher.
Yes.
Chris was the angry young trot at Oxford, and Christopher was the one who was able to dine with the future Tory cabinet members at the same university. Were you consciously playing two roles?
Yeah. I came from a rather circumscribed background. My parents hadn't had much education, hadn't had much luck in life. I had a rather dull boyhood, and I spent a lot of it in a boys' monastic boarding school, making sure that I broke out to get to Oxford. Having got there, I thought, right, I'm not going to miss anything that's on offer here.
And if duality is the recurring theme of the book, so much of that surely can be traced back to the very different personalities of your mother and father, and you dedicate separate chapters to them. Your father is referred to only as the commander. His name was Eric, but he was a Royal Naval commander. He was very upright and loyal, and quietly proud of you in his own way.
Well, so I later found. I used to think I must be a huge disappointment to him, because he was a great one for the martial and the patriotic virtues, which when I was younger I was not. He was reasonably good at sports and keen on the ethos of them. I couldn't care less about them and was no good at them. So I used to think, well, the old man, you know, he must wonder what he's done to deserve such a son. But later on, after I'd sort of got to university, made him proud, then let him down by constantly being arrested on demonstrations, not doing any work, blah. When I worked for the New Statesman, I found that he was privately giving gift subscriptions at Christmas, so 5-shilling subscriptions to his very small circle of friends, and that I don't think he ever knew I found that out. He would have been embarrassed if I had.
But the most moving episode, most moving chapter in the book is the one dedicated to your mother, Yvonne, and she was a very different character, more of a, I suppose, a free spirit. She was aspirational, she was ambitious, and she died tragically. She took her own life after eloping with a lover. Was that difficult to address, to face that?
Oh, yes. I mean, that happened. Her death occurred in 1973, when I was just 24, and it's taken me this long to be able to write about it properly. And in fact, the test I set myself was, when I said to the publisher I'd try a memoir, was I'll have to write that chapter first, and if it doesn't work, I don't think I want to go on with it. And if it does, and I'll have to ask other people's opinion about that, then I think I can do one. So I wrote it all down in one night, actually, having sat around thinking about it for a bit, having found my notebook of going to Athens to find her after her death had been reported as a murder, crime scene, and then finding on investigation that, in fact, she'd entered into a suicide pact with her lover. And this at a time when Greece was going through a revolution and counter-revolution with the rebellion against the junta. There were tanks in the streets in Athens. An amazingly dramatic week in my life. And I wrote it all down at one go, and then I wept, much more than I thought I would. But I thought, I don't want other people to cry when they read this. I don't want it to be sentimental. So I sent it off, submitted it to the judgment of a couple of trusted friends, and they said, no, that'll work.
There is a heartbreaking detail when you are in Athens and you are taken by the local police to see the room where she died, and it's revealed that she made a series of phone calls in the bed, and you speculate that you may have been able to have prevented her death in some way. She was calling your number.
Yeah, the switchboard at the hotel said that there was a record of this number being called a lot, and they showed it was mine. And I'd just moved to London. I was young. I was having a good time. I'm trying to make a name for myself in journalism. I wasn't at home very much, in other words. And we weren't answering machines and cell phones in those days. So I could never rid myself of the feeling that if I picked up the phone and she'd heard my voice, it would have altered her sense of despair.
The book is fantastically funny throughout as well. I mean, there is tragedy at the beginning, and there's a lot of those episodes of your life that we've read about in various publications, and Vanity Fair and the New Statesman. But there is a moment when you visit a brothel with Martin Amis, which we've probably only read about in fictional form in Amis's book Money, and that is the inspiration. That visit to the brothel with Amis is the inspiration for the chapter where John Self in Money
goes to the disgusting massage part.
Goes to the very disgusting
Well, it's not
massage.
exactly the inspiration. It isn't that we did that and then he thought he might make a novel.
No, that was research.
Yeah, it was. He said to me one day, I've got to go to this knocking shop. I forget what word he used.
Handjob parlour.
Handjob parlour. And you're bloody well coming with me, okay? He didn't want to go alone. I said, wait, do we know the form of this place? A terrible Tahitian-themed, Polynesian-themed joint on Lexington Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. And, well, you be the judge if you'd like to read it. It's the only example in my life, really, I can think of really turning lead into gold. It was a really depressing and horrible experience.
But
and a humiliating one, actually, and a shameful one, and out of which come 3 or 4 pages of absolutely brilliant humour.
You do write about Martin Amis with a great sense of affection and love.
Yes.
And it's a fraternal love, I guess. And is he...
Well...
well, it's almost a homoerotic love at times.
What I say is, and of course, I do love him dearly, and I say in the book that it's in the form of a question: can you have a heterosexual friendship with a man? And I say, well, probably eventually not, but it was worth trying, if you see what I mean. And it is love, but it is based on a huge enthusiasm about women.
You also, in the book, address head-on the question of whether you drink too much.
Yes.
You say you don't drink too much, you drink sensibly. You drink only with meals. You drink a lot, though, don't you?
Well,
by most people's
I don't
standards.
think so, but I think by some people's standards I perhaps do. No, I thought I'd better write about it because it's become part of the thesaurus of stuff that's in the clips about me. And
people like George Galloway calling you a drink-sodden popinjay.
Yes, drink-sodden Trotskyist popinjay. I remember saying not everything he says is untrue.
But do you think the accusation...
I used to drink too much. When I was young, when I discovered that I could afford it, which I hadn't been able to do before, and when I got over my revulsion for it, because my father used to drink and became rather gloomy, so I wasn't attracted to it, which I think a strong argument, therefore, that it must be in the genes a bit. When I found that you could charge it to your expenses in Fleet Street, I thought, well, how long has this been going on?
What about the smoking? Have you? Because you gave up.
Smoking, I gave up, and now I'm back on it a bit. If there's anything that I've hurt myself doing, it would be smoking.
And why did you start again then?
Because in some ridiculous way, it can make you briefly happy.
Christopher Hitchens' memoir, Hitch 22, is available in hardback.